Throughout the many Fallout games, we've seen numerous types of Deathclaw, from the intelligent in Fallout 2, capable of speaking to humans and running their own settlement, to the Chameleon in Fallout 4, whose thick hide doesn't blend in like its name suggests, rather flickering between several bright colours to confuse their target. You probably know of these variants, they're quite well known, unlike the focus of today's video, a Deathclaw unlike any other type, found in Fallout Tactics. Now, according to Scott Campbell, when he initially came up with the idea for Deathclaws, he envisioned them as a feared and legendary creature mutated by FEV, a creature that excelled in the post-war world, an apex predator somewhere between a wolverine and a brown bear. That is what all Deathclaws might have looked like going forward. However, when he took his concept sketch to the artists, they were quick to veto the design due to rendering difficulties. There was simply too much hair on the creature to make it move in a realistic way, so it wasn't used. Even so, the concept of a monstrous creature mutated by FEV was an interesting idea that they wanted to keep, but they still needed a model to use for a Deathclaw, and that actually came from a different game that Black Isle Studios was also developing. Planescape Torment is a 1999 RPG set in the multiverse of Planescape, a Dungeons & Dragons-like world. For that game, they were developing a Terrasque, a massive dinosaur-like beast with horns, scales, and large claws. After the model was sculpted in clay and digitized into a 3D model, it was decided that the Terrasque wouldn't actually feature in the game, so instead of letting it go to waste, it was given a new name, Deathclaw, and became the creature seen in Fallout 1 and Fallout 2. As for the hairy Deathclaw that was rejected due to rendering limitations, those wouldn't appear for another 4 years, with the release of Fallout Tactics, developed by Microforte and released in 2001. These Deathclaws are much more akin to what Mr. Scott originally had in mind. As their name suggests, hairy Deathclaws are covered in fur, but there's a lot of other differences between the two creatures. Firstly, they have 6 horns, 4 more than the reptilian type, and there's a pretty good reason for that, which I'll get into in just a moment. These additional horns cover a lot more of the Deathclaw's head, 2 where you would imagine them to be, 2 more curling around the sides of the face, 1 more jutting from the back of the head, and finally, 1 more in the middle of the face, similar to a rhinoceros, although the creature they came from is much smaller. With all of these extra horns for defense, it should come as no surprise that their claws, while still dangerous, are smaller and less defined than their reptilian counterparts, perhaps due to them being less essential during combats and hunting. Being hairy and having more horns are just 2 differences. As I've said, there's a lot more, and they all stem from the fact that hairy Deathclaws are not created from Jackson chameleons like the Deathclaws we know. Instead, they come from some sort of mammal. This is kind of explained by the matriarch in Fallout Tactics, the leader of her kind, when she reveals that she feeds her young from her teats, implying she's a mammal. Mammals are defined as animals with fur whose females produce milk to nourish their young. Not sure if the creatures are warm-blooded, but there's nothing that goes against them being warm-blooded, so I'll just say they are. So hairy Deathclaws are mammals, as far as we know. However, there is something that they do that makes this statement kind of awkward, and that's the fact that they lay eggs. Luckily, there's 2 mammals that I know of that can do that, platypuses and echidnas. Of the 2 creatures, I think it's safe to say which one was used to create these creatures, because they don't have beaks, flat tails, or webbed feet to help them swim. But they do have a surplus of horns made of keratin, almost as if their spines were genetically engineered by humans or mutated from a virus into an excessive amount of horns. Plus, baby echidnas, called puggles, feed on milk sustained through pores on 2 patches of their mother's body, which might have mutated into teats. No mention of what happens to the male's 4 penises, and I don't really want to get into that. Even so, against all odds, that still somehow isn't the weirdest thing about the Deathclaws. Adult hairy Deathclaws appear to possess intelligence comparable to humans, and some can even mimic human language. In contrast, baby hairy Deathclaws are unintelligent creatures, behaving much like any lower animal species might. Hairy Deathclaws are still pack creatures. However, while other Deathclaw packs typically have an alpha male and female, hairy Deathclaws only have a single leader, the matriarch, the strongest female. She has white fur, lays all of the eggs, and decides what the rest of the Deathclaws do, commanding them with a very interesting voice.
You fight as if you were from my own brood, warrior. My children are now free due to your selfish act. Thank you for your trust. I have much to think about.
You can encounter the matriarch and her brood during a difficult time in a place called Mardin near St. Louis, as the mother has been captured by a group known as the Beast Lords. Now, the Beast Lords are a group of cannibalistic tribals who possess psychic control over other creatures. However, the hairy Deathclaws were strong enough to resist the Beast Lords' psychic powers, preventing them from being enslaved, at least in the beginning. Instead, the Beast Lords, under the command of Emperor Da, captured the matriarch and used the tight-knit matriarchal nature of hairy Deathclaw society against them, threatening violence against their leader in order to control the rest of the pack, and it worked. The Deathclaws were used to raid settlements, but it was raiding a certain settlement called Quincy that led to the Beast Lord's downfall. It is here where the player character, called the Warrior, leads a Brotherhood of Steel squad to defeat the Beast Lords and their Emperor, liberating the town of Quincy from their control, and in the pursuit of doing so, can also free the matriarch and her brood. After being freed, something crazy happens, and that's the matriarch and some of her brood actually join the Midwestern Brotherhood of Steel and aid their cause against the Calculator.
Your elders are wise, warrior. They accept my brood as recruits. My children wish to show their thanks. It is strange time, no? My young fighting with you and the rest of the soft, hairless ones. Treat them well, and don't feed them flesh after midnight. Farewell.
Having Deathclaw recruits likely means some structural changes within the Brotherhood, especially in terms of feeding the new recruits. While they most likely eat enemies and wild animals, there is a rule about feeding the creatures flesh after midnight, a clear reference to the film Gremlins. While Scott Campbell had already left Interplay before Fallout Tactics was created, I like to think this might have been a dig at scaly Deathclaws on his behalf. Sadly, while hairy Deathclaws are not currently canon, their return could make for an interesting twist, with Season 3 of the Fallout TV show seemingly heading toward Colorado, where the Midwestern Brotherhood of Steel might exist, and if so, it's entirely possible that these hairy Deathclaws could also appear. Of course, this might cause some issues for the chapter, as the Elders back west and the Commonwealth chapter from the east have made their feelings on mutations and mutants alike quite clear, so we can only imagine how they might react to Deathclaws serving within the ranks of the Midwestern Brotherhood, potentially leading to another Brotherhood civil war. Leave your thoughts in the comments and let me know if hairy Deathclaws should return, or if, like most things from Fallout Tactics, should remain in the dark.